Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name is Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. A Norfolk man recovering from injuries suffered in a crash on New Year's Day. The Stanton County Sheriff's Office says the one-vehicle crash happened Wednesday afternoon just east of Norfolk. Authorities say the 76-year-old driver lost control of his SUV, crossed the southbound lanes of Highway 35, ran through the median and both northbound lanes before striking a culvert. First responders removed the man from the wreckage and transferred him to a Norfolk hospital. He was later flown by helicopter to an Omaha hospital. His condition has not yet been updated. Southeast Nebraska made it to the end of 2024 without measurable snow. They might be paying for that this weekend. The National Weather Service has expanded its winter storm watch now to 20 counties in southeast and south central Nebraska. You see them there from Saturday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. Forecasters say the region could be getting a glaze of freezing rain followed by snow. The NWS says up to 8 inches could be possible by late Sunday. The snowfall, part of a larger system, expected to dump even more snow on Missouri and Kansas. This comes after northern Nebraska saw snow overnight Wednesday. Storm spotters reported over 3 inches of snow fell near Ponca, while 2.5 inches of snow fell near Emerson. The Nebraska Supreme Court has filled its lone vacancy with the appointment of Jason Bergevin by Governor Jim Pillen. Bergevin, a District 5 associate judge, after spending the last 2 years as a district judge in Platte County. Before taking the gavel in the 5th Judicial, he spent the previous 7 years as an assistant attorney general for the state. His legal career dates back to 2005 with stops in Colorado, Lancaster County, and the U.S. Air Force. Kearney's volunteer fire department released their stats for 2024, saying it was one of the busiest years they've seen in a while. They responded to 760 calls on the year, almost 480 of which were for fires. There were another 180 rescue situations and more than 100 non-emergencies. In total, they racked up more than 9,400 hours of service to Kearney on calls alone. That doesn't include their training and fire prevention hours, on top of miscellaneous work like service to the community. More than 100,000 Nebraskans are getting a pay bump. The hourly minimum wage increase in Nebraska increased this week from $12 an hour to $13.50 an hour. That's after a voter-approved change to the state's minimum wage law sees the figure increase by $1.50 annually until it reaches $15 an hour next year. Then there'll be annual cost of living adjustments made. The pay bump's part of ongoing efforts to keep pay up with the rising cost of living. An economic study done in 2022 in the ramp-up to the law changing estimated around 150,000 Nebraskans work minimum wage jobs. Well, it's a new era of city government in Kearney. Michael Shively spoke with the city's outgoing mayor about the city's accomplishments and what could be next.
The city of Kearney is going through a transition time in the new year, as is the city's most prominent public official. After more than 20 years on the city council and 18 years as mayor, Stan Klaus didn't seek re-election this cycle. Instead, he campaigned for and won a spot in the state legislature. But before he takes his seat at the Capitol, Klaus is reflecting on his time in City Hall.
It's part of your legacy. You know, some people, that's their family, that's what they do, or they put their name on something. For me, it's up here. It's like, yeah, I had a part of that.
Klaus oversaw massive change in Kearney. Some projects include the construction of a second interstate exit, renovation of the airport, the creation of the Central Nebraska Veterans Home and Patriot Park, a new hospital, 2 in-progress cancer centers, the promise of a new medical school, the expansion of the hospitality district, and the anticipated arrival of the Kearney Sportsplex.
I've always been one of those, don't tell me we can't do it, let's figure out what we can do.
All those projects came while Kearney maintained the lowest property tax levy of any Class 1 city in Nebraska.
Well, valuations have increased, but when you still have a low levy, you don't get the windfall that people think you do. You're gonna get your increase. There's no question about that. But you're also a growing city.
Setbacks included the devastating 2019 flood, losing the bid for a Facebook data center, and changes in the city's air service provider. But Klaus wasn't alone in tackling the issues. Randy Bushcutter and Bruce Lear started on the council around the same time, and Mike Morgan served as city manager for 19 years. All but Bushcutter recently stepped down.
It's always upon us to make sure that culture carries forward. And I said, 20 years ago, they turned it over to Bruce and me and Randy and said, here you guys go. And we hired a new city manager and, they trusted us. So now it's our turn to trust the next group of leaders.
Those new leaders include Mayor Jonathan Nickla and City Manager Brenda Jensen, who just finished her first year in the role. As far as Klaus, he says he already misses being involved in city affairs, but thinks that feeling will fade as he dives in at the state level. In Kearney, Michael Shively, News Channel, Nebraska.
A federal appeals court killed net neutrality yesterday. It's the end of a fight that's spanned nearly 2 decades. Net neutrality is a term that forbids internet providers from giving preferential bandwidth to certain providers. Without it, broadband internet providers can purposely slow down content they may view as competition, like video streaming. Conversely, they can also charge companies a fee in exchange for more bandwidth. The Federal Communications Commission has been fighting to regulate broadband providers as utilities, so it could protect net neutrality, but a 3-judge panel on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit in Cincinnati ruled the FCC does not have that authority. Net neutrality has not been enforced since the first Trump administration. Today, House members-elect set to choose their leaders for the 119th Congress. President-elect Donald Trump says he wants Speaker Mike Johnson to keep the gavel, but it's unclear if Johnson has enough support for that to happen. The chamber doesn't have anyone lined up to serve as a temporary speaker. And as Amy Kiley reports, a leadership vacuum could complicate Trump's inauguration.
Meetings are going well.
House Speaker Mike Johnson faces a leadership election today that could come down to a single vote. Without the help of Democrats, Johnson can only receive at most 3 votes of present, or 1 vote for another candidate and 1 present vote. Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky says
he does not have my vote.
If Massey and just 1 other Republican vote for another candidate, Johnson will lose.
There are those, potentially a dozen holdouts.
Johnson says he's been meeting with those holdouts and feels optimistic.
We'll have maybe 1 no vote, I think. I think we get it done on the first round. Certainly hopeful for that because, as we noted, we've got to stick together.
Lawmakers can hold multiple rounds of speakership votes, but that process lasted for 3 weeks in 2023 when then-Speaker Kevin McCarthy lost the gavel. If Republicans don't elect Johnson in the end, it's unclear who would take his place. The House would be effectively paralyzed until it had a new speaker.
We saw it happen 2 years ago, and it was an embarrassment for our party.
Now the stakes are arguably higher. Lawmakers are supposed to certify the presidential election results this Monday, January 6th. It's unclear how they could do that without a speaker, and January 20th is Inauguration Day.
We would have ourselves a constitutional crisis, I would argue.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
Johnson has at least 1 supporter in the Cornhusker state. Representative Adrian Smith issued a statement of support for Speaker Johnson yesterday. The 9-term representative from Gearing called Johnson the right choice to lead the House, adding he thinks Johnson has strong relationships with both President-elect Trump and congressional Republicans. Jobless claims hit an 8-month low to close out 2024. The latest weekly initial claims for unemployment benefits totaled 211,000, 10,000 less than estimates predicted. Data released yesterday by the Department of Labor showed continuing claims for unemployment benefits fell to 1.84 million for the week ending December 21st. That's a 3-month low. In Nebraska, first-time claims were down slightly. Continuing claims did jump once again. Experts say yesterday's data underscores that the U.S. labor market remains resilient and continues to cool in a slow and steady manner. U.S. mortgage rates are on the rise. A standard 30-year fixed-rate mortgage was nearly 7% in the final week of 2024, according to Freddie Mac. The financing giant says that's the highest level in nearly 6 months. Analysts say the increased rates make it more difficult for would-be home buyers. The mortgage rate hikes have come despite the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates 3 times last year. President Biden expected to announce he's blocking a Japanese firm's $14 billion takeover of U.S. Steel. That's according to an administration official who said the announcement may come today. The U.S. Steel, a century-old steelmaker based in Pennsylvania, has struggled in recent years. A federal committee reviewing the transaction did not make a formal recommendation about whether the takeover should be allowed. It leaves the decision up to the president on whether or not to block the deal on national security grounds. Japan's Nippon Steel has said it's determined to protect and grow U.S. Steel by investing nearly $3 billion into its facilities. Nippon and U.S. Steel have vowed to take legal action if the deal's blocked. President-elect Donald Trump has also said he would block the deal. Influenza cases are rising across Nebraska. The latest report from the Department of Health shows more than 650 people were diagnosed with the flu in just 1 week. That number only includes the people that were tested by doctors, not those who didn't seek any medical attention for their symptoms. And as Casey Wannenberg explains, the surge in cases comes as fewer Nebraskans choose to get vaccinated.
No, that's fine.
This is the single best way to protect yourself from influenza, according to the CDC. Rolling up your sleeve and getting a flu shot every year.
Well, yeah, for sure. The person doesn't need to get sick if they can avoid it.
Gordon Warwick stopped by this vaccination clinic in Valentine.
Vaccination is always a good idea. It doesn't hurt. Apparently not at all.
It doesn't even hurt.
But nationwide and here in Nebraska, fewer people are choosing to get a flu shot.
Vaccinations have been way down for the last 2 to 3 years. Some of that they attribute to the vaccine fatigue with all the COVID shots that people were getting.
According to the CDC, every state except Iowa has seen fewer children getting flu vaccines this season. And flu-related deaths among children are at their highest level since the pandemic. So far, 1 child in Nebraska has died.
Influenza can be very serious for people who are, especially people who are over 65. They are very susceptible. People who have immune problems and people who are really little.
And if you're one of those people who are worried about getting a shot, it's really quite simple, right? Yep. So you just roll up your sleeve. I do this little technique. Relax my arm, which might be the hardest part. And I try to squeeze over here and not think about it.
Yep. And I typically talk to you all the whole time and then that you don't know what's happening.
Yep, pretty easy, right?
There you go, you're all done.
Even if you think it's too late to get vaccinated, Booker says there's still time.
Yep.
In fact, flu season sometimes doesn't peak for another couple of months.
It's just a safer, smarter thing to do. Might take chances.
A shot the CDC says is definitely worth taking. In Valentine, Casey Wannenberg, News Channel, Nebraska.
Former Husker and Beatrice native Cam Jurgens received his first Pro Bowl invitation yesterday. Jurgens, one of 6 members of the Philadelphia Eagles selected to the Pro Bowl and one of the 4 league centers. He receives the invite in his first year playing center. He took over the role for longtime Eagle Jason Kelce. The Eagles drafted Jurgens in 2022. He began his time as Kelce's backup before transitioning to starting right guard last season. Jurgens spent 4 years at Nebraska, starting in every game for the Big Red in 2021. The Pro Bowl will be held at Camping World Stadium in Orlando on February 2nd. And you can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com. Click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. This is News Channel Nebraska.